the elected versus appointed committee. Okay, so we're missing two people. I'm going to write that down, Bob and Tony. And we're going to talk right now about, okay, here comes host.
So we are 6, is that correct?
We are. And so I decided that the best way to deal with this committee is for us to tackle one topic at, there's Bob. Hi, Bob. Are you
Hi,
with
everybody.
us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good, then I'm all set. I'm sorry I'm a couple of minutes late. I had to hustle around and get some stuff done. Here I am.
I'm going to suggest to you, Bob, that you start 5 or 10 minutes before the start time, and that might get you in it.
Thank you, Maureen. That's a good suggestion.
You're welcome. So we're starting with one topic at a time because I think that's the best way to get as much done as we can get done within an hour. So today we're going to talk about elected versus appointed and what are the pros and cons of that. I sent you some articles. I think it's a good thing to begin with. Now, it's going to lead me to a very important thing. I went through the updated version of our ideas and topics for the elected and appointed, and it has omitted some of the major areas that were part of our discussion, which for me includes the discussion of consolidating auditor and treasurer, talking about a sheriff's appointment versus what's going on. And I don't know how they eliminated it, but this has to be updated because that's not okay. I don't know whether you noticed. Have you guys looked at this list?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I haven't seen it.
She sent it
This list
around.
here?
Olivia sent it?
Yeah. It's the list of all the ideas. And at the top, it now says new idea presented. And our elected and appointed are missing some pieces. So they just must have not been translated when it was updated. So I'll let Olivia know that has to be redone.
But can't we just decide on our own? Just a sec. Sorry about that. I got a cell phone going here. Can't we just decide on our own agenda with regard to the issues we're going to be discussing?
And we will. And that'll be at the end of the agenda. If you've looked at the agenda, you'll see that's the future topics, okay? So that's what we're doing. And now I want to talk about meeting notes. And I've thought about this so long and hard, but I think the best way to do the meeting notes, since we don't have a note taker and none of us are secretaries, everybody needs to make a no more than 4 or 5 sentence summation of what you find your important points are today. And just send them to me, and that'll be 6 paragraphs that will constitute our minutes. You agree to that? Short and sweet.
Sure.
Just the highlights of the things that you feel are important for this discussion.
So Maureen, you're not talking about each one of us does a summary of the entire meeting, but each one of us does a summary of the things that we brought out.
You're responsible for your notes. Yes, exactly.
Got it. Okay.
And I just think that's the best way to go about it, and it will be attached and it'll be posted on our website. So can we all agree to that?
Yes.
All right.
You got it.
Got it? Okay, good.
Can we assume, Maureen, in sending them to you that you will consolidate them?
You can
Because
assume that.
Out of repetition.
Yes, I will be happy to do that. Okay? So
With regard to discussion on.
you know what, David, what? You can't keep interrupting.
Okay.
Okay, let's just go down the agenda and then we'll get to this.
I wanted to go back to number 2. That's what I'm doing.
Discussion of how to conduct meetings, okay.
I'm just confirming, we're going to be on autopilot for this time on this day every week, correct? Until further notice?
We haven't decided that yet.
Okay. Well, can we
Okay,
just-
we're gonna decide that when we get to the future, and then we'll know if this is the time that everybody can meet. So let's go to the number 4, discussion of the pros and cons of elected. I don't know whether you had a chance to read some of those articles. There's a ton of articles out there. But let's go around and let's start with you, David Dellendorf, alphabetically here, and see what you came up with for the pros and cons, or just start with the pros if you want.
Well, let me just tell you where I come from on that issue.
Sure.
I mean, just kind of the starting point would be what is the best way of deciding about elected versus appointed? What are the concepts? I mean, to me, there's a couple of concepts. One is we want as much democracy as possible, as much as possible, as feasible or advisable. I mean, we want the public to know that they have a voice in choosing the various officials to the extent possible, number one. Number two is we want the best possible candidates. That's what we want. We want competent, experienced people in those offices.
Right.
And I think there might be a conflict between those two. I mean, democracy can be very messy. And I think we have a potential for a conflict in particular, because point 3 I'd make is that we have we're a very small county with a limited population, and we don't have the same pool of experienced, talented individuals as you have in a King County, for example. So those 3 factors, I think, are what I'm thinking of when I discuss as we go along discussing this issue, because I'm concerned that we might make a decision that bites us, like of deciding let's elect somebody to, like that somebody mentioned the health officer position, for example, electing somebody to that.
Mhm.
That raises questions. You could end up having somebody who's not experienced being the only candidate to run, and therefore they are elected, but they're not a very good choice by the public, because the public can make choices like that. And Paul Dossett said at one time something about the only qualification for county assessor was 18 and over. I think he was being facetious, but I think
No,
No,
I
It's not in the, yeah, it's not a requirement.
didn't say
well,
that.
it isn't a requirement, and I bring up another topic, and that is qualifications, minimum qualifications, because I don't want somebody 18 years old as the only candidate, and he has no earthly, or she has no earthly idea what they're doing.
Of course.
So I like qualifications to come into play also. So, so those issues are going to flavor what I end up thinking and recommending and deciding to vote on as
No, I
we go.
think those are good points. Those are really good points.
Maureen, let me interrupt for a second. Sorry, there were 2 links that I was on the wrong link and I was waiting to be let in. So I'm sorry for being late. I apologize.
We're just glad you're here, Tony.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so we covered a couple of things. We're going to take this one topic at a time, and today it's going to be elected versus appointed, the pros and cons of it. And I'm going to go to Paul next. So I'm going to take you all in alphabetical order, and then we'll take it
I
there.
don't have a concept or feelings about either way, because obviously I've come from the institution that's been in place for a long time. And I didn't see any real problems in going through that process for 28 years. However, I have to correct David. I did not say that you have to be 18 to be in the assessor's office. What I was proposing for elections that the minimum age for council people be 18 years of age,
Okay.
based on the ability to vote. So, yeah, I really don't know where to go from here, except I can only speak for my office that I came from, and I truly believe that should be an elected position. I do have the reasons. I won't vocalize them now, though.
Okay, that's great. No, that's understandable. How about you, Tony? Have you thought about this?
Yes, I have. I think certain positions in the county have to be independent of the other departments. For example, the clerk, the assessor, the prosecutor. Those should be elected positions because we don't want a government that's appointed. So people will appoint whoever they like or not like. And all of a sudden we have a government that's really not serving the people, but serving the appointers. That's my quick take on it. I haven't really delved deeply into it. We're talking to the health officer this Thursday. I have a lunch meeting and he's going to be presenting. So I'd like to ask him the question because that was a position that was pushed forward as possible elected. So I'm going to ask him, what does he think? So, and I'll report back to you.
Yeah, good. That's good. I think Randy had some information on that as well. He was going to pass on. So Dick Grout, what do you think?
I was one of the two people who put this issue on the initial list. It's something that I've been concerned about for a long time. And Paul's experience raises a good example. I mean, Paul could come in with, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, with no particularly relevant experience and do a good job as assessor. But we have had people in those positions who came in with no particularly relevant experience, and they didn't do a good job at all. I mean, I've been here since '73, and I've watched a lot of people come and go in those offices. So, and I will say the articles you sent, Maureen, gave me a lot of food for thought. I mean, if you guys haven't read those, I strongly recommend that you do. They're quite interesting. My feeling is, I mean, I could go either way on whether they're elected or appointed, but what I want is if they're elected, I want minimum qualifications and some sort of a job description. It can be a job description that the council can elaborate on, but there have to be some minimum qualifications. You can't just have somebody come in off the street, which is what you can do now, file for election, get elected, and be in those offices.
Yeah.
And managing the county money or real estate and property taxes, you know, I think it's a horrible situation. So that's where I am. And I will say, I really favor, it's going to take a lot to change my mind, that auditor and treasurer should be combined.
You
We're
wanna
going to
wait-
get to that. That's going to be a topic.
you want to wait?
I
for-
just threw it in, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's going to be definitely a future topic, even though it's not on our list right now. All right, so is that good for you, Dick? You done?
Yeah. Yeah.
How about you, Bob? Bob? Are you muted?
You're muted, Bob.
I have a lot of respect and agreement with what David said originally. The stuff that the two basic things going on that are in conflict with each other. And the question is how we resolve the conflict. First, you elect people when you have a great concern for democracy and for a direct accountability to the citizens and to the electorate. You appoint people when you have a great concern for what the basic requirements of the job are, and that the individual, there has been a search to find the right individual, and that the right individual that can then be appointed. I have a potential solution, which is weird, and I haven't seen it anywhere else other than in Nashville, Tennessee, where I used this with.
Your sound is gone.
You're muted again.
Bob, your sound is off. Bob?
Bob, you're muted. I don't think, nothing.
I think it's a connection.
Hey, Bob, you're muted. We can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Well, he has had problem with his signal. Bob, if you turn off your video, you can probably get a stronger audio signal and we'll be able to hear you.
Can't hear you, Bob. Can
He's
you
got
hear
a-
us?
He's got a bandwidth problem.
I'll call him again and suggest what Dick just said.
Thank you. Thank you. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well, shall I answer the phone or just forget it?
Answer.
It's me calling you. Can you just
I
turn off?
understand that. But
Yeah.
if you can hear me, there's no need to do that, right?
We can hear you.
You're cutting out.
Bob, turn off your video.
Won't be able to see my handsome face then,
Yes, but we'll be able
which I'm
to.
keeping somewhere else, by the way.
We'll be able to.
My video, stop video, bang. Okay, does that improve my audio?
Yes,
Well, I
Yeah.
can hear you.
yep.
Okay, all right. I won't use my exterior audio then.
That's like saying the gold is in the and then you went away. So you were talking about a solution.
Yes, yes. The possible solution is to look at both situations where you have the minimum people are elected who must be elected. You have the council elected, and of course, the prosecuting attorney has to be elected, as do all of the Superior Court judges, elected according to statute. So they're off the table. But the other people, the council, ought to be elected, in my opinion. Be directly responsible. And then after that, there should be a search of, for in every other position, there should be established the minimum criteria, what the criteria are, what the description of the best candidate would be. And then some person should be authorized, probably the city manager. I have not the idea of a personnel board made up of the city manager and all the council and the prosecuting attorney. They should establish what these minimum requirements are, then make a search for everybody in every one of these positions. Those people should be appointed. And then after, because then you know you're going to get the people who theoretically are the best folks for the job. And then in 2 years, you should start an election cycle where the people who have been appointed in those jobs are after that elected, because if the people don't like them, don't think they're doing a good job, et cetera, they can be canned, and you can either start again by another appointment, or those elections can be between the person who's holding the office presently and a new candidate. That would be my suggestion. And get a little bit
Is that like a tiered approach?
kind of, if you want to call it that. It's combined appointment and subsequent election is what I would call it.
Okay. David, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah, well, can I point out another issue that I'm concerned about? Everybody's spoken except you, Maureen.
I will. Don't worry.
No, but do you want to weigh in now, or shall I?
Are you bringing up something that we're not talking about?
No, it's the same subject. It's just another issue, a sub-issue that I'm concerned about. Can I go ahead?
Okay, go ahead, but be brief if you will.
So what I like about appointed positions is that there's going to be a bigger pool of candidates that we can explore. If you're talking about, use an example, a treasurer or clerk, you're going to be limited if it's an elected position to candidates who are from our county, because somebody with experience as a clerk in Seattle or in Spokane or someplace else in the country is not going to run for election in our county. They're just not going to do it. They probably don't even know about it. And so I'm concerned that if you do have elected positions, that the pool of potential candidates and the quality of those candidates is going to be reduced. Nobody is going to run for county administrator, for example, if they have to campaign in our county, but they live in Boise or someplace like that. Those kind of candidates you'll only surface if you do a search. If you do a search, under the county council's auspices to identify good candidates region-wide. So that's a concern of mine. We have to acknowledge that we're not going to get candidates from out of the region if we elect them. I just don't think we're.
Yeah, it's agreed. It's agreed. Well, for my part, I mean, I've been reading so much about all of these people, elected and not elected. It's you can have a pro and a con, and they can wipe each other out because they balance. But I am concerned that we, as a charter review commission, don't make radical changes to the charter that aren't needed. And that includes electing and appointing. If it's not broken, we shouldn't try and fix something. I think we should be reviewing that which is important, something that can be tweaked in the charter. And maybe significant changes need to be made, but we must be very careful with those because it puts the county, the citizens, into confusion. Why are we doing another upheaval or another hard thing for them to understand? My experience is that we have a huge responsibility that can literally confuse the county citizens. They're not following the government day to day. And if they get an election ballot that contains things they have no idea what we're talking about, their vote may be taken but not sincere. It might not reflect what is actually needed. So we have to be careful in what we recommend and what proposals we come up with. That's critical.
Yeah.
And as I look at all of the pros and cons, there are much of the things that you are saying. When you elect someone, you do have accountability because they're accountable to the people.
Mhm.
That's an important thing. And people like to vote for people. They like to vote for a position in the county government. That's known. But they are likely to have political baggage or maybe obligations that might make that difficult to them to carry out their duties. I think electeds present a separation, which is a good thing to have in a government, some power separations, and certainly some protection for policy making, but the reverse can be true as well. It's possible that electeds can concentrate more on policy than an appointed person. But my problem is that the qualities that you get from an elected may not necessarily reflect what we need in this county, and we do have some issues here in this county. Accountability is a big thing. But we have to be careful. And I noticed that in our list of things, there are a number of recommendations for electeds that I am not so certain I can support myself. And I think we'll get to that as time goes on. I see no reason, well, no, that's not what I want to say. I don't want to go there. There are just pros and cons. I think that we should, like Bob just said, we should elect the people that need to be elected, but hesitate to add new electeds to that list. I do think there are some areas that can be consolidated or combined to be more efficient. But maybe we don't need to change it. Maybe we should just leave it as it is. So this is a discussion that needs to happen before we can dive into the specific offices that we're looking at. That's my 2 cents. Dick, you have something to say?
Yeah,
Yep, Dick?
I think yeah. Am I not on?
Yep, you are.
Okay. I think you raise a really valid point about not spooking or overwhelming the voters with things that seem to come out of nowhere. I will tell you that some of the ideas, not in our committee, but some of the ideas that have been put forward, I look at and I think the voters will look at this, if some of those things, and just go, oh my God, no, and reject it because it'll just be too much. I think your points are well taken, Maureen, about elected versus appointed. And so, and I could easily go along with that. I told you I can see both sides of it, particularly after reading all that stuff. But if we stay with those offices being elected, then I think it's imperative that there be minimum qualifications for those jobs.
Yeah.
That you've got to bring some relevant experience to the job.
Oh, I think that's a good point. Who else? I think Bob had your hand up here. Didn't you, Bob?
Yes, I would like to say that I do also very much. I think, Maureen, there was a lot of wisdom in what you said about, and what Richard, what you said, about not not doing a lot of, having a lot of changes that are not like begging to
Yeah,
happen. After all, there are three ways that this commission gets into, or that a change is made in the charter, from what I understand. One is that the citizens can rise up with an initiative, I guess. The other
Yeah.
is that the council can propose one. And the third is us. Now, the first two arise out of a perceived need for something to change. Our job, there can be absolutely zero need to change anything, and we're still called upon by the charter to come together and make that judgment. So we ought not to be prejudiced in this situation, thinking that just because we have the opportunity to change something, that we have to. It is just as
Exactly.
legitimate for every bit of this is correct, or only the small thing can change. There's a lot of stuff that might be ideal.
You're cutting out.
Do what Maureen had to say, which is confusing the electorate, et cetera. Oh,
You're cutting out a bit there, Bob. Nope, can't hear you.
He hasn't turned off his video. Paul had his hand up.
Go ahead. Also, Tony did. Tony, I think was next. Tony?
Yes, thank you, Maureen. I agree that what you said is to basically not to upset the status unless there's really a serious need for change. I get that. Lived on this island for a long time, and I've seen a lot of things change. Sometimes maybe not needed. As far as elected versus appointed, I totally agree that with appointed positions, yes, there should be qualifications, and there should be, even a nationwide search or region-wide search. But for elected officials, I'm trying to figure out in my head, how do you go through the process of, so I pay $1,000 to sign up for an elected position, and I get my document filled out for the elections office, and then I have to go in front of some kind of a committee to determine if I'm qualified or not. Suppose the committee has 5 people in it and the vote is 3-2 that says you're not qualified. What does that mean as a democracy? Are we supposed to be tested before we get elected if we're qualified or not? I would propose that the electorate in our county are very well educated, they're very well informed. They can tell if somebody is not qualified for a position or not. I'm not sure how to go through the process of going from filling out the paperwork to sign up for an election as a candidate, and then go through the process of being verified as qualified or not. How's that going to work?
Yeah. Go ahead, Paul.
This is really a great conversation, and thank you, Dick, for bringing this up, because if I think about my experience in the assessor's office, the assessor I worked for was the chief appraiser for the assessor before him. So he had experience. And then when I was an appraiser for 8 years, then I was elected, and the new assessor we have now, John Kulseth, was an appraiser also. So to go with what Dick was talking about, 95% of what we do in the assessor's office is appraise property for tax purposes. There's over 15,500 parcels we do, or they do, and every year, because we're on an annual reval. So it's very important for the assessor to be aware of how to assess property and all the ramifications, and have maybe some experience doing that. I know from my own time when I was assessor, when we were doing a section of the county and assessments, and we were getting ready to send out the notices, I would go through all of the books and check all the new assessments and make sure that I felt that they were all within the parameters of what they should be. So to go with what Dick was talking about, I could go along with the assessor having at least be in what we call an accredited state appraiser or a certified appraiser. One was certified as for like real estate that you have for a loan or something. If you're state accredited appraiser like I was, then either one of them have exactly the same background, same training, and brings that to the assessor's office when they're elected. So I would go along with that, Dick, if that were to be the case.
Mm-hmm. David,
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Dick. We need to have minimum qualifications, whether appointed or elected. In response to Tony, I can see his point, but yet I think we could do a search and see how other jurisdictions deal with this issue. I mean, we certainly aren't the first county to think about minimum qualifications. There's got to be somebody else out there who has that requirement and has a system, and we could look at what that system is to hopefully allay Tony's fears. The other thing is with regard to this is, what if you only have one candidate? What if you only have one candidate? And that candidate is unqualified. And the voters, then the voters do not have a choice. They're stuck with that one candidate who's unqualified. So, in a small county, that can happen very easily.
well, it's also very dependent though, David, on what position you're seeking.
Oh, sure.
And I'm just taking, for example, the county county manager. The county's practice over the last 10 years has been to use a headhunter group called Prothman, and they go to Prothman, and Prothman amasses a talent pool of administrators that go from county to county, and they apply for jobs, and usually one is selected from that pool. What you get are qualified people that have experience in county or local governments, and you know that their expertise has some gravitas. On the other hand, you get people that bring a blueprint with them, and this is the way they do it, and this is what they want your county to do, and they execute that blueprint. I've seen that happen in our county. I'm not saying that's bad or good. It's just that that's what they do. And with it, of course, comes a contract with a salary and a benefit package. It's an expensive thing to recruit. While department heads, they have large reach for some department heads. It's not nearly as extensive as it is for the county manager. So qualifications then become a debatable thing, I believe. Did you want to say something, Dick?
Yeah. First of all, I owe Paul an apology for implying that he came with no relevant experience. Paul, I completely forgot you were a appraiser for all that time.
No.
So I'm sorry. But Paul raises a good point with that. In response to what Tony was saying, I'm not suggesting anything like some board that decides whether you're qualified. When I say minimum qualifications, what I mean is you have written, published minimum qualifications for the job. And then people who file for the job theoretically should meet those qualifications. But then David raises a good point that if you only have one candidate and they don't meet the minimum qualifications, which I can think in the years I've been here, I mean, we've had a number of uncontested elections for some of those jobs. And the people who ran really weren't qualified. And there's no recourse then if it's elected. So, I mean, that's a good issue. But I'm not proposing anything like what Tony was suggesting. I just want to be clear about that.
Tony, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, there is actually a constitution that says that no person there's an RCW about qualifications for election. The only thing that says that you have to be a resident of your district and a citizen. There's nothing else that says you have to be qualified to run for office.
But charter allows us to add to that.
Yeah, that's right. We can amend that.
I understand we can. And to Dick's point, yes, I agree. That's not what you were saying. But who's going to check the qualifications at which counter in the county? At the elections counter, or is it going to be at the, when you file, I don't know, who's going to check the qualifications and agree to it or not?
Bob, did you want to add to that? Bob?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, we have a prosecuting attorney who has to be elected by statute, who is elected, And I'll bet that he has to be an attorney, and he can't be a, run a recycling center or something. Check on that candidate to see if he's an attorney or not. Let's ask Randy how it was cleared that he was an attorney. Was there some requirement, and where was that requirement contained, and who checked up on that requirement? Now, if we appointed everybody initially, all this concern would be taken care of. Then we could get back to the concern about democracy by confirming at the next round of elections, confirming with the people that that's who they want.
Yeah.
Candidate who had asked.
You're coming in and out here, Bob.
Sorry.
We can't hear you.
Okay.
Paul, you had something. You had your hand. Sorry.
I'd like to broaden it out, if you don't mind, with some of the other positions. I noticed in the treasurer's office, and over the years I was in the assessor's office, and treasurer's right next door. The people that were running for that position were usually clerks that were in the treasurer's office and know all of the mechanics,
Yeah.
what it takes to
Yeah.
be treasurer.
Yeah.
And they, every one of them, been very successful. However, when you get into auditor, you really need to have some accounting background. And it would seem to me that that would be something you would like to see in your auditor. So I just wanted to bring that out. And those are the people down the road from where I worked in the assessor's office that I can result from. So I'll take it from there.
Let me just say one thing. The auditor is an interesting position, and in a lot of counties, they appoint an auditor. They don't elect them. And in our county, Mylene has a background in tax preparation. But she's very smart and talented, and I think she has grown into that job and made it pretty interesting and I'm sure pretty accurate. But then again, she didn't come in with those qualifications. So a lot of things we do depend on the person we think can do it. I think David had his hand up here.
Well, don't try to fix something that's not broken. I mean, that resonates with me. I mean, we don't have to do anything. Just because we're in this position doesn't mean we have to go in there and come up with something where we failed. But so with regard to the issue of is something broken, how can we determine, what can we do over the next week or two to talk to various individuals in the existing government structure that can give us some advice on whether there is something broken about? Well, I think Paul has spoken very well about the assessor's office. I don't think we necessarily need to go that route, but I don't, like the treasurer, is there something about the treasurer's position that's broken and would be better served to be appointed or folded into the auditor's office? Who is out there as a resource that could help us figure out if there's something broken?
Tony?
I don't want to answer that, David, because I wanted to say something regarding the previous conversation regarding the auditor. I've known Maureen, I've known Mylene since she was working she and her husband ran a computer store on San Juan Island.
Yes.
She had no experience as an auditor, but yet 3.5 elections or 3 elections later, and she's in her third 3.5 terms, she's done very well as an auditor. So I think people are smart enough in this county to learn it's a job. Now the assessor is, Paul's position, the assessor, that's probably something a little more specialized. They could probably, they come out of that particular department. I mean, nobody on the street on Orcas Island is going to say, I'm going to run for an assessor without any experience to start with, or on the street in Friday Harbor. They have to know something about the process to run. Randy, as another example, I mean, you have to be an attorney to run for a prosecutor, because that's the job. An engineer is not going to run for a prosecutor, and so on. So I think we understand who is running, and the only issue that I can think of is that Dave's point of, if nobody else is running for a position except one person, and that person might not be qualified. I get that part, which that could be a problem.
Well, we've also had unopposed elections. We've had people run, like Mylene's run unopposed a number of times.
Yes, in re-elections, yes. But when she first ran, she was opposed.
So let me just offer this to everybody from a background. The issue of consolidating auditor and treasurer has been on the table for a long, long time. That goes way back. And it was dealt with, I mean, it was talked about by the freeholders when they set up their first thing. And then the first commission reviewed it, but we ran out of time and didn't explore it. And the only reason to discuss it is to see if we dug into it, would it be a more efficient way to run auditor and treasurer's departments, because they're both about the finances of the county. Assessors is not part of that discussion, but there are in other counties in the state of Washington combinations of this where they hire a CFO and they combine those departments. And the question would be, we can look at that and we can talk a little bit more. And I think that's a reasonable thing for us to do. I mean, and we might at the end rule it out and say it's not necessary. But anyway, that's the background. And Paul, you have something to say?
Yeah, I do. The treasurer works a lot with the assessor. There's a host of work that goes on all year between the assessor's office and the treasurer's office. You'll find that probably Pierce County is one of the only counties in the state that has a combination assessor-treasurer combination. They've been that way for at least 30 years. So I just wanted to make sure that we are not just leaning on the auditor treasurer when in fact, good half of the time that they're working with the assessor, we're continuing.
Right. I'm just saying that because that's a model that other counties have used to combine those two departments.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I think Bob had your hand up. No? Okay. Richard has his hand up.
Indicted.
Hi, Richard.
I think those are all good points. I mean, they are really good points, and it's part of the quandary here of how this would be dealt with. I want to go back first to something Tony said about we have intelligent voters who know how to assess candidates. And yes, he acknowledged you have the problem of the unopposed candidate, but I would not accept your argument, Tony, that we have always have intelligent people who run for office and people don't run for offices they're not qualified for. I can think of a few names, and I won't mention them, but I think you all can.
Oh, go ahead. Mention.
No, and there's more than one. And the thought is scary that one of those people, they have tended historically to run for races that are almost always contested. And that's the saving grace. But if they ran for one of these offices that is often uncontested, it could be really damaging. And I think the idea of having some minimum qualification for some of those offices makes a lot of sense. I mean, we've been fortunate in those three offices, auditor, treasurer, and assessor, that very often the deputy or somebody else with a lot of experience chooses to run when the incumbent decides he or she has had enough. But it doesn't always happen. And I think, I mean, from what I've heard in Mylene's office this time, it could be a problem. I am told from people who should know that there's nobody who's really interested. So where does that leave us? That's the thing I'm trying to guard against, is making sure that we have some kind of minimum backstop there, that we don't get a truly unqualified person.
It might be really good for this committee to ask the HR person for a job description for the electeds, to just get a copy of what they have on the books as a job description that we could just take a look at and use it as a point of reference.
Well, Paul, you probably know, I don't think there is one.
No, there's not.
For the assessor?
No.
No.
I think there's one for the auditor.
Yeah, could be.
And I think there's one for the treasurer. I may be mistaken about that, but we can ask the HR person for
Yeah.
that. Because we don't make up a job description for, and when I say we, I don't think the county makes up a job description for the county manager. I think that is in another bailiwick, if you will. Bob, you had something to say.
Can you hear me?
Yep. And we can see you.
To begin with, I would say that the job description is not the same as job requirements. You can read all the way through a job description, and it can be 3 paragraphs long, and the job requirements might be 1 line. You know, you have to have a JD, you have to have this or that. I would propose that we get a description of what the job requirements ought to be regarding every job, and those could be initiated by the people who presently hold the job, and a decision could be made upon whether or not those are correct, either by the council or the county manager. Then once we have that job description, if we decide these people are going to be elected, when you fill out your form to run for election, you put down how you fill that job description, and then one person, and I would suggest the county attorney, looks at that to determine whether or not that person is qualified by the requirements of the job. Not qualified, they go out. They're qualified, they go on the ballot.
But isn't that the HR's job?
Well, it doesn't have to be the county attorney. I'm just suggesting if we don't know of a proper person to do it, that would be someone who is kind of divorced from the politics.
We can't hear you now, Bob. You're gone. Try the picture again. Try turning the picture off.
Yeah.
See if that connects us better. Okay.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, we can. That must be the trick.
So anyway, he would be a suggestion that I would make as someone who could check every application.
On that line, I mentioned this in a meeting a couple of weeks ago. I have a copy of a memorandum that the old charter wrote up because we realized there is nothing that described the qualifications for the county council. And this was put together, and I want you to try and read it again. I'll send it back around to you folks. We realized that job descriptions didn't cut what was necessary in some of the areas when you're recruiting for a council, and that we needed to really look at what kind of character they have. And that's included in this kind of paper. And I think it's valuable. And I'd like to get some feedback from all of you on it, and it might give us other ideas. So I'll resend this. And I'm sorry if I cut in again. Tony has something to say.
Yeah, I'm listening to you all, just very wise folks, and I appreciate the input. I think I'm tending to agree that there are certain qualifications that could be very minimal, that is a sentence or two. For example, if you look at the assessor's manual that's the state of Washington provides, there's an example of qualifications, and they actually list the prosecuting attorney's qualification, which is that they have to pass the bar exam, and that's easily verifiable. So if somebody comes to the front counter at the elections office, I want to sign up for a prosecuting attorney, they have to show that they've passed the bar exam. So maybe something similar to that could be for the assessor, that they pass some kind of a course on how to be an assessor, or so something simple that's easily verifiable without a vote of a subcommittee that is going to determine if this person is qualified or not. So I do agree with Vic's initial statement that we should have some kind of a qualification, but I would propose that it should be very minimal, that anybody at the front counter, and I'm using that as an entry point for an election, is that they can, do you have that certificate? Sure, good, you can sign up then.
Okay.
So that I would agree to, but anything further than that, where somebody has to look into detail of stuff, I mean, I think it'll be too much to limit people to run.
Okay. David.
Yeah, I agree with Tony to the extent that you can have a certificate or a title, well, a certificate of some sort, a law degree or whatever Paul referred to earlier about an assessor's qualifications. But you're going to have also positions where there's not necessarily a title that applies or a degree that applies. The county manager, for example, there it's an issue of experience. It'd be great to say you have to have a college degree, but what if the person doesn't have a college degree, but they've worked 30 years and very successfully managing Boise, Idaho, and they want to retire up here and work. So experience comes into play also, and should come into play, not necessarily the title. Now, I would volunteer if anybody wants me to do it. Let me finish. I want to volunteer to see if I can find other jurisdictions that have some system along the lines of what we're talking about, and how they have they set up the vetting of the qualifications, and see if there's something we can use as kind of a potential guideline.
Let me
And
just
I'm
respond.
going to I'm sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Let me just respond a second. Yeah, I agree with you. The appointed positions, sure, have as many qualifications as required because there's some committee that's actually vetting them out. I get that. So I agree with you on the appointed positions as a county manager. I get it.
Well, I think I'm going to ask the HR person to give me what they have on the departments, the department heads. And just let's take a look at that, and let's see if any of these qualifications that we're talking about appear in writing anywhere. Because the only thing we might be able to do is tweak whatever is in the charter. I mean, we can't rewrite things. Go ahead, Richard.
It occurs to me, one of the things we might want to do with one of our meetings is invite the assessor, the treasurer, and the auditor. And ideally, if we could do it in one meeting, and we tell them, look, you got 15 minutes. And what we would really like is your opinion on should your position be elected or appointed? And what, if any, do you think should be the minimum qualifications for your position? Let's see what they say.
I think that's a good idea.
Good idea.
I agree.
I think that's possible. Does everybody else feel that way?
Then we have to hold them to 15 minutes.
Yeah, I know. I'll get my zapper out and we'll do a zap.
It's called mute, Maureen.
Mute. I knew it had another term. Oh God, I forget these things. I'm old. So can we kind of put this down now and talk about what we want to pick up next time? I mean, I don't think I can pull those four folks together by next week. First of all, are you guys comfortable with meeting at this time on a Monday?
Yes.
That work for everybody? Because I'm going to have Olivia then help me make this a reoccurring meeting, okay? Everybody agree to that?
Yes.
Right. So that's one. Two, what do you want to jump into next time? Because this was really valuable for me. I like to hear what everybody had to say, and it feels more comfortable than the large meeting when nobody gets to talk much. So first of all, I brought up earlier that this sheet is incorrect. The most updated list of our priorities, there's missing the whole bit on should we combine auditor treasurer? What about the sheriff? All that stuff. So what would you like to hit next time? Pick it. Dick's got an idea. What, Dick?
No, I have a question. What do we think is more expedient? To continue with one topic until we reach some kind of consensus, or we divide into at least no more than two opinion groups, or to kind of go through the various issues meeting by meeting and then try to bring it all together? I'm just asking, how do we want to approach this?
For me, I needed to have this general discussion and have everybody weigh in before we can talk about the specific departments that are on this list. So this is helpful, but if you want to continue this discussion, I'm game. But remember, time is going down and we have limited. Yeah. What does everybody think? Tony has an idea.
My recommendation for next time would be to identify the elected positions that could be an issue or a problem. For example, treasurer / assessor. and maybe focus on 2 or 3 positions and delve into those to see if they are supposed to be elected or appointed. I don't think we have a lot of time to look at the whole swath of the whole county positions, because to invite everybody in to talk to us will be time consuming. But I would suggest focusing on 2 or 3 positions that we think, because between Paul's input and your input, Maureen, and others, we would know what county positions are positions that could be appointed or stay elected. So I would just say have us focused on 2 or 3 as opposed to the whole 6 or 7.
Oh, yeah. And who else had their hand up? Bob, yeah.
Two things that appear, two things that appear on this list with more than once that look like they might require our attention. One is the idea of term limits. It appears several times on here. Do we want to do anything with that idea? Is that appropriate? And the other is the specific position of the county manager. I like the way it is now, appointed, but some people may like to see that elected. I think that position is going to be more controversial in what we do with it than the other positions, but it may require special attention. That's all.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yes, David.
Well, I like the
We're
fact
running out of
that
time.
I
Go
like
ahead.
the fact that we have this general discussion today. And I think we've got out a lot of the issues and people can ponder them over the next week. But when it gets right down to it, we're going to be deciding on a case-by-case basis how to proceed with each position. Because we're not going to just say everything elected or everything appointed. So, maybe we just have to focus like next week on 2 positions and just say we're going to dive into those 2 positions and we're going to decide. And then the following week, another 2 positions. But having said that, I think having the opportunity to hear from people, if we're going to talk about the treasurer and the auditor, I think we need to have those people talk to us first before we really decide on those positions and everything else, for example. But I still think we ought to just get some of them out of the way. Start making decisions 1 by 1 or 2 by 2 by 2, whatever.
That's the point. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Go ahead, Dick.
So, all right, let me make a specific proposal for next time then. Let's talk about 2 positions, as you suggested, David, the county manager and the sheriff. Let's cover those 2 next meeting.
That's good with me.
Yeah.
Is that good with everybody else? Because the sheriffs, we haven't even mentioned it, and it is definitely needs to have a discussion. So we won't invite anybody. We'll just start this, and I will start trying to find out if there's anything in writing in the county for electeds or otherwise. But that's a good start. All right, we'll make that our topic for next week, 10:30 Monday. That'll be our slot. All right. Yes, David. Quick.
Very briefly. We haven't talked about partisan versus nonpartisan positions, and maybe that's not our mandate to talk about that. I like the system of nonpartisan positions. I'm not going to try to convince anybody that they should be partisan, but I just wonder if that's something that we think should be discussed. Right now, if I would say no, let's not do it. But what does everybody else think? Is that part of our mandate?
Right now, that is, San Juan County, all the electeds are nonpartisan, and it's not on our list for discussion right now. It's something that if we had time at the end, I'd be happy to discuss, but not now. Go ahead, Bob.
I believe we have an elections committee, and maybe the elections committee will be taking that up. I don't know, but as you say, it's not on our list now, and I think we've got enough on our plate. That's my
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too.
Thank you, Bob.
Is that good?
Yep.
So we're going to end here, but I just wanted to say one thing. Kevin is doing a great job. He is working so hard, and he's pretty stressed because our meetings are getting longer and harder to manage. So I'm just going to pitch to all of you. Let's try and help him get through the meetings by sticking to what he's asking us to stick to. And be a part of moving forward instead of holding it back, because there seems to be some holdback. I just want to support him, and I hope you guys feel the same way. And Olivia. Everybody is working hard here, but thank you, because this was enlightening. I really appreciate it. Okay?
Thank you, Maureen.
Sayonara,
Thank you.
as they
Hey.
say,
Maureen.
and one.
Bye-bye.
I'm ending here. Recording off.